Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I want to talk about when you and an avoidant both stop contacting each other. It could be for whatever reason that you both have stopped contacting each other. Usually, each of you will go through a stage of grief, and it looks a little bit different. And so people get very confused because towards the end of an avoidance grief cycle, what they do is they try to reach out. And you get very confused because they didn't seem like they cared about you at all. So why are they reaching out? And then you think, should I reconnect? What should I do? Because your stage of grief is different. And so I would like to talk about that today. If you are struggling with an avoidant partner and you are really confused as what's happening, you can book a call with me. That is pinned in the comments. And so for the avoidant individuals tend to be very independent. They value independence, emotional distance, and normally they grew up with very critical parents. Typically, the criticality is not physical. It's not like they were physically mistreated. Some of them are, but if it's a dismissive avoidant, usually it is this person, their parents were very critical of them, very harsh, and very high expecting, but they were praised once they showed their independence. So that's one version. Fearful avoidance, they were actually abused, they were mistreated, they were neglected. And you might see these things. So if your partner has mentioned, my mom mistreated me, my dad mistreated me, my mom hit me, etc., oftentimes you might be a fearful avoidant. Some anxious preoccupied as well experience this, but what happens is with the anxious preoccupied, they almost are taught that they have to readjust their feelings, they have to be kind, they have to hide their feelings, they have to almost do everything that other person says because otherwise they won't get the love that they deserve. Okay. And so I've had some calls with you guys that are anxious attached, but you have been abused and mistreated, but it was a different way than a fearful avoidant. For you, it was almost like you had to hide parts of yourself and your parent was absent emotionally and critical, and it was kind of hot and cold, and sometimes they liked you, sometimes they didn't. So you were taught that you have to hide yourself. With fearful avoidance, maybe it is hot and cold, but usually what the fearful avoidant has to do is they have to change how they show up. Sometimes they have to be detached, sometimes they have to be very emotional. Sometimes they have to show emotions, sometimes they don't. The blueprint is different with what you are supposed to do. So you can see that as well. With dismissive avoidance, typically their blueprint is they pretty much have to not show emotions. Fearful avoidant, they have to change. And then anxious individuals, they have to hide their true self, but the only way they can get care and love is if they kind of have some sort of emotional outburst or expression. And so that was what each insecure attached was kind of trained. And so with avoidance, when that contact stops, they actually have initial relief because they feel like, okay, I have space to myself. I'm allowed to be myself. I can just, be who I am, and I don't have to be bothered by all these emotions and these expressions that I have no idea how to deal with. And so the pressure is removed. So actually, what you're going to see with these individuals is that they're going to almost act like they're happy. They're happy to be out of that relationship, even though they're not. They're just, at this point, they're just happy to be relieved of that emotion. But that doesn't mean they're happy to be without you. It feels like that. The next one is they actually start having denial and rationalization. They often tell themselves that the disconnection is for the best. I don't need this relationship. But the reason that they're doing this is actually, they are feeling an emotion, right? There's no reason to deny something that isn't there. So they're denying that they feel that they don't need you, right? I don't need this person. I don't like this person. That relationship didn't mean anything. Sometimes what happens is they might say, we were just friends. And you might even start seeing that out loud. Some avoidance, what they do is they start breaking up this. And right at this denial rationalization stage, they might move quickly to friendship. And so you might not see all of these stages because they already reached out and tried to be friends with you. That's a better sign than you guys even realize, because that means that they are more aware of their feelings, and their version of denial is friendship. It's better than their version of denial being completely avoiding you to some extent. However, some of them, they will go through all of these grief and they might reach out to you. And so sometimes they reach out at this time, sometimes they do the next time. And so if the rationalization and denial is not strong enough and they can't handle it, what they start doing is they start trying to bond in indirect ways. So they might not re-engage, but you might not see this, by the way, but they might have a lot of these over intense emotions. And so they might lean into drinking, negative behaviors. They might start traveling more, anything to kind of squash and hide these feelings. And so you might start thinking, wow, they seem like they're living their best life, when in actuality, they're just trying to cover up their feelings. And it's not for you, it's for them. And then the last case, the last stage is very common, is they try to reconnect with you. In most cases, after this distance or whatever it is, they try to reach out to you. However, this is typically only the case if the distance was not you trying to make them reach out, teach them a lesson. Normally it's because for whatever reason you both it wasn't able to work, or you are actually giving them space because you're thinking, okay, I think they're overly triggered. I'm going to give them space, and then, maybe I'll reach out at some point, or maybe I'll let them reach out. Like, you're doing it actively for the better of you two, not because you're trying to manipulate the situation.